here it is school. Then we write list of, then we write the element that we want in our list. So we want to write type this, and if we print this, the list prints with the name this and this. And after that, this list that we have defined is not mutable. That means it cannot be changed. So for our list to be changed, we have to define it as mutable list of, so that we can change its value, we can remove something. For example, if I define a list this, now I can now there's a list named myval, that is a mutable list that contains the name of fishes. Now I can change the name, change or delete any fish. And to delete, I will use the name of my list, that is my list. Then I would type remove. Then I have to type the element that I want to remove. Then it would return us true. That means now it has removed. Now if I type this element again, then if I print it again, then it returns false, and it is a boolean. And why did it return false? It went to check the list, and it sees that there is no element which has a value of shark in it, because we have previously deleted it. So it returned false. That means there is no element in list that has shark value in it. This is what it returns. And method returns true when it's successful and removes the item passed. So this is all about list. And then we move to arrays. Arrays are similar to list, but it's somehow different, because arrays have a fixed size. For example, if I read another line, unlike list in Kotlin, which is mutable and immutable, there is no mutable version of array. That means array is always immutable. It cannot be changed. Once you create an array, the size is fixed. You cannot add or remove elements except copying it to a new array. You cannot add or remove elements except copying. It's saying we cannot add and remove. We can change the value of that array, but we cannot add any extra element of that extra element in an array, and we cannot remove any element from an array. So the rules about using val and var are same as with arrays of a list. Okay, so now we define it. Now we start defining an array. For example, this is an array named school. If I now if I have run it, that means an array named school is created by us. Now if I want to print this directly, for example, if I want if I print this directly, it returned us something that we are not familiar of. What did it return? It returned us the address of this array, where this array is stored. It returned us it. But if we want to print this array, we need to convert it into a string. To print it using print statement, array of arrays dot toString. Okay. So what did it means? It says that if we directly try to print an array, it is not possible, because it's an array that this variable only stores the address of this array, and to print that we need to use a util function that is already provided to us by Kotlin, and then we try to convert this into a string, and then we print. Then it returns us a string, which is this whole part is considered to be a string, and then it returns us. So try reading till here, and if you find anything, any doubt, then please ask. Try doing it.
Maybe we can briefly explain what's the difference between array and list. So we've created lists. We created lists that can be changed, that cannot be changed, and then we created arrays.
One difference we can see that list can be printed directly. For example, here we can see we didn't need any toString variable to print the list. We directly used school, the name of that list. And in case of array, what we did was we used this function. So one difference is that in this it just shows the address of this array, and in list we store the whole list. So for example, let us consider that there's a list that is very long. Then it would take much more memory than in case of array. As you can see, it's just stored the address, and then in that array we stored every element separately. One difference could be this. The other difference is that array it is mutable or it is immutable, but in list it is mutable or immutable. But in case of array it is always immutable. And in list what we can do is we can add elements in list. For example, if I created this list, what was the name of my list? My list. So I can do my list dot now we can add further more elements in this list, but in case of array we cannot do that because we have previously defined array. And here if we see, we defined an array that takes only 3 elements. It would never take any other element. It can never be 4 until and unless we change the size of this array. And in case of list, what we did is we previously defined this, and if we want to add element, we can only use the add function, mylist.add v, and then it is added. It returns us true. That means now if I print this list, print school, it would show us 4 elements. My list, sorry. School at add. Unresolved difference. Here it is unresolved because we defined the list of immutable. Now it returns, if we print this list, print my list, then it would return us as the also with the element that is already added. Now we can see there are 4 elements, but in case of array we cannot do that. We can only change one element. For example, here what we could do is we could change that element. So if this is an array, we can change this element. Instead of mino, we can change it to another string, but we cannot add any 4th element until and unless we define the array of size 4. So this is clear. Does anyone has any other problem? Is it clear?
If no question, then we can proceed further. And please, if you don't understand something or it's completely unclear, please don't hesitate to ask or just say, I'm lost.
Shall I move?
Yeah, sure.
So creating an array, we did this. We can also, for example, in the previous array, what we did was create an array of string that only stored string values. We can also create an array which contains both fish, that is a string, and an integer. Value mix is equals to array of fish and integer. You can also declare array with one type of all elements. Declare an array of integer using int of array. So here you can see that array of is used, then we can use both string and integer. But if we define it by this int array of, that means it is an array of integer. So it can only store integer in it. So these are types of these are the functionalities that are provided to us by Kotlin. For example, in previous languages, old languages in Java, there was no functionality of creating an array that stores both both string and both an integer. So these are some additional features that have been added in Kotlin. Then we can add array. We can add array, for example, here. Let us see. Here there's an array named numbers and there's an array named number 3. Now if we add it and store it in f, then is equals to numbers 3 plus numbers. So here you can see that what would be the array if I would try to print it. So try to print this array, then you can see try to print it. Then what we did, 4 5 6 3 elements from here, and then we added it to 3 elements from here, and we stored it into a new array named f. This was not added to the array. For example, as I said, that array cannot be mutable. So don't get confused thinking that 4 5 6 is added to 1 to in 4 5 6 we added 3 more elements, 1 to 3. We created a new array that stored the value of both arrays. So this can be a confusion that you told that it is not mutable and you are adding 3 more elements in it. We are not adding it. We are creating a new array named as that stores both the arrays. And if I try to print the 5th element of this array, print. So can you guess what would be the element here if I try to print the fifth element? So you would count that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It should print 2, but it would print 3. Why it prints 3? Because in array we start the indexing with 0. Always remember that if an array of length 6, and we start the indexing with 0, the first element is referred to as to 0th index. This is the first index, this is the second index, this is the third, this is fourth index, and this is fifth index. And this is fifth index, we got the value to be 3. Then try it till here. Try doing it yourself till step 5, and if you have any doubt, please ask.
If you are trying new combinations, if any one of you are doing fifth step, then maybe you can share with us your variants, what you get. If the creating the lists and arrays is clear, then we can proceed with loops.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
In my understanding, array and list is we can set any type in both array and list, right?
Yes, we can specify if we want to specify. For example, if we know that we want to create an array of integer, then we would specify that we only want integers in this array. So for example, someone tries to put any string in it, then it would show error to him saying that it is a list, or it is an array of integer. And in some cases, if you don't know that what type we are putting, then we can use either anything. For example, if I take an example, if I want to print, if I want an array of number of days, then I know that it must be an integer. So we would specify that previously to store int. And if there is an array in which we need both string and integer, then we won't specify while defining it. So this is a basic idea behind defining it and not defining it.
Okay, thank you.
Now you can read this. This is the same thing that I said. In case if we want to if we try to print a array, it shows us the address. So here in step 5 it explains that. You can read through it. I think you'll get. And in here we tried. What we did here is we created an array array of 5 elements. That this is a way of defining. We want 5 elements that starts from 0 and 0 to 5. How much element? If I'll define this, value array is equals to array of 5, and if I run this, not enough. Array of 5, that is size 5, and we want it to be, we didn't previously define that. So what we did was we defined an array of size 5, starting with 0 to 4. If we define an element of size 5, then it means that it would start with 0 and end with 4, because in array indexing starts with 0. It is used to refer to the index. And if I try to print this array, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. First I defined the array of size to be 5, and it I referred to the indexing of that array. So here it prints 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. In array we start indexing with 0, so it printed this. And if I try to multiply it by 2 and then try to print it, and then I try to print it, then it would give me every element multiplied by 2. And I run it, and you can see 2, 4, 6, 7. So this is the basic step. And now let's move forward to loops. So what are loops? Loops, as the name suggests, loops mean something that will be repeated after for the given condition, that would loop around until and unless the condition is fulfilled. So this is the basic example of it. And here's one more example of how we can print elements. Here what we did, if we want to print an element from array, we did was we convert this array into a string and then we printed it. Instead of this, if I want to print every element separated by spaces, so what would I do? If I define an array of shark, salmon, and so I wrote a for loop for elements in school. For every element in array school, I want to print that element. This is what this line is saying. For every element in school, I want to print that element, that is shark, salmon, and male. What if I run this? Then it would print every element separated by spaces. If I didn't put this space here, then it would print it, but it won't give any space. So this is what this line means. And here you can read about loops, how you can define for loops. And let's take examples for loops. Now if I want to print a number, print all the numbers between 1 and 5, so what would I do? Print for I in range 1. How we define range we studied previously. Here, print 5. So what it did, for I in 1 to 5, it print 1 to. So let me elaborate this for you. Here what it did, we initialized a variable named I, and we told that for I in the range 1 to 5, print I. So what this loop basically does, first the value of I is 1. It went and print I is equal to 1. Then after this printing, the value of I is incremented by 1. So now value of I becomes 2. It checks that is 2 between 1 and 5. It says yes, it's between 1 and 5, so it prints 2. Same goes for, then it increments 2 by 1, and same goes for 3. It checks that is 3 between 1 and 5. Then it says yes, it's between 1 and 5, so it prints 3. Now if it goes to 5, it checks that is 5 between 1 and 5. Yes, because I said in range we include both the outer bounds. So 5, and it incremented the value by 5 by 1. Now the element i's value is 6. Now it checks that is 6 between 1 and 5. Then it says no, it's not between 6 and 5. So this line will not be executed. Only this would be executed. And if I wanted to print spaces between them, what I would do is I cannot concatenate integer and a string. So for this I would use another print statement with spaces in. Now we can see that we can do this. So let's take any other example. For example, let us see this first. So this is the same thing. Here it is written down to, that means we want to decrement. So we want to start with the value of 5 down to 1. That means we want to print elements from 5 to 1. We print I. And here we want I to be in range 3 to 6 and steps 2, which means every time I print I increment the value of I by 2. Here nothing was defined, that means we want to increment it by 1. Same goes for this. For I in D to G, print I. So every element between D to G would be printed. So it is DEFG. So let's take any example. For example, I want to print a table of I want to print a table of 5. So what would I do? I would write a for loop for I between in 1 to, I would write for I in 1 to 10. What would I do? I would print each time I print I would multiply it by 5. Since I want to print the table of 5, what is it doing? If I run it, 5, let me put some space in here. So what I did is, for I in 1 to 5, print I into 5. So for I is equals to 1, I went here 1 into 5, we printed 5. Then we checked the value for 2 is 2 between 1 and 10. Yes, it's between 1 and 10. So it would multiply by 5 to the 10. Then we incremented the value of I by 1. Now 3 is 3 between 1 and 10. Yes, it is. So I multiplied it by 5. It went until I reached I is equals to 10. For I is equals to 10, I checked is I in between 10 in between 1 and 10. Yes. So I multiplied 10 into 5. It gave me 50. Then for I is equals to 11, is 11 between 1 and 10? No. So what would it? So the loop didn't move forward and it breaks till here. Then I want you to do the similar thing and try to print the table of 7. And what would I do here? Anyone? here if I want to try to print the table of 7, what would I do?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
For example, I want to print a table of 7, 14. So what would I do? Multiplication table of 7. Here I printed the multiplication table of 5, and I think you got familiar how I did it. Or do you have any doubt regarding this part?
Just change the 5 to 7.
Yeah. So what we would basically do would change the value of 5 to be 7. So now it would multiply every element of I with 7. So it would give me the multiplication table for 7. Now, okay, so let's take any other example. For example, for I in 1 to 100. Let us see what's the benefit of this for loop. I want to print a character like this. So what would it do if I run this? It printed @ sign 100 times. For example, if we didn't have for loop concept, so to print this, what would we have been done? We would have done this. We would have done this over and over again to print @100 times. You getting my point? So for loop came in handy for printing this 100 times. If we used only print statement, we would have to write it 100 times so that we could print @100 times. So for loop came in handy here. By getting.
Yeah, I think most of us familiar with for loops. Yeah. So it's just to complete same activity.
Please try to read it till for loop. And if you have any doubt, please ask.
So I think in Kotlin, for loops, so some of you may know for loops, but I think what's interesting here is that we should know the syntaxes of for loop when we want to extract one element from an array, for example. That we use like for element in school or for item in array, and then if we want to extract index and its corresponding item, then we need to use index item in, for example, school with index. So this is the concept that we need to remember. And one thing that I found interesting is that in step 3, exercise 3, there are 4 types of for loop that shows us, for example, how can we create a value which follows some rule. For example, we use down 2, it will create as 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, right? Or we can specify the step size, step 2, for example. Yeah, so I think it's interesting to remember this for different types of for loop. I think, don't find it in Python, like this keywords down to or step that Python we learn during our Python sessions.
These keywords are just introduced in Kotlin so that it is easiest to understand.
Yeah.
For example, if we use it in any other language, then we first define a variable named I, then we write the condition from where to where the loop will run, and then we will write the increment value, how much we want to increment that value for the loop to work. These are the basic keywords designed to make programming easy.
So if for loop is clear, then let's tackle one more concept, while.
So the while loop is same as the for loop. Now if I read this program, variable bubbles is equals to 0.
Maybe there is someone from like Aisha, Tomoki, Abdullah who wants to explain us this code, like what it does, or line by line, or you can do it at once. But I recommend you to just explain what's going on here line by line. Like for example, we create a variable and so on. Would anyone want to go first? Like Aisha can go first, then Tomoki second line, and then Abdullah.
So in the first line, we define the variable bubbles as 0.
Yeah.
In second line, the function starts. Yeah?
So it's a while loop, right?
So
Okay.
no.
So start until the bubble is 50.
Yeah.
And the next adds.
So we incremented one. So it is same as we read English. For example, let me read it for Aisha said it very correctly. First we started with variable name bubbles, that is 0. Then while bubbles is less than 50. How we read English is similar to that. While bubble is less than 50, we increment bubble by 1. This plus sign means we increment it by 1 each time the value is less than 50. This is what it is, and Aisha said it very correctly. This is just like we read English, and each time it is done, we print. This is a symbol for printing the variable in a string. So each time it's done, we print bubble in water. So what would it print? It would print 50 bubbles in water. Now can anyone read what's written here?
So will it print like each 50 lines?
I am trying. No. Why would it not print 50? Because if we wanted it to be print 50 times, then we would have inserted it inside this scope. Because here in this scope, from here to here, you're getting what
I
I'm
see.
saying?
So it will add, and then once it's more than or equal 50.
Once this loop will be completed, then it would move forward. And if we wanted it to print each time, so what we do, we put this inside this scope.
So this time it will just print 50 bubbles, right?
Oh, wait. So the loop will be looping from 0 to 50, and after 50 it prints the 50 bubbles in the
once
water.
this bubble is complete, once this loop is completed, that the condition of this is met, then it would move forward. Until then, it would be till here.
It's some kind of I think it seems useless, yeah, but we can just imagine it's like a
this program is
timer.
Would be
Once the timer hits 50, then we will have a printed statement. Okay. Anyone wants to explain or try to explain the next example? Don't be afraid to make mistakes. We are here to learn. Just any suggestion? What do you think happened here?
Okay. In this here, we subtract bubbles one by one, while bubbles is more than 50.
Yeah.
And if the bubbles is less than 50, then print bubbles in the bottle, the number of bubbles.
And
right?
the outcome will be 49. Yeah, because
yes.
How many loops are going to be run until we get
0?
Okay, we have 1, 0. Abdullah, what do you think? How many loops are going to be run?
I don't understand the second after the two parts. So I'm familiar with while do, but do while I don't know what is the second part. The do
while,
then
yes.
bubbles. So the loop will be on the after the while. No.
Yeah.
Wait.
Arslan, could you explain us what will be, how many loops are going to be there and why? The second example. No, with do and while.
Yeah. Let's start from here. Here the bubble was 0 and we use this loop until the bubbles became 50.
50. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So it gave us the value 50 bubbles in water. Now the value of a variable value is turned to 50. And do bubble minus minus while bubbles greater than 50, print bubbles in water, print bubbles in. So it would do bubble minus minus and once only. Why? Because while bubbles greater than 50, it is not greater than 50.
Yeah, so
once it would do.
Yeah, so when we first encounter this statement do, we have bubbles equal to 50. Then we do bubbles minus minus, so we subtract 1 from bubbles, it's going to be 49. Then we go to the evaluation statement. While bubbles are more than 50, then do the subtraction again. But we now have 49, which is less than 50. Then we exit the while loop and just print.
Do while loop.
Yeah,
just print the last.
Print
Same as here.
Okay, so in the second paragraph, it's only do one times loop.
Yeah.
It was the first. It ran the first condition and then checked is it greater than 50.
Okay.
And it said that no, it is not greater than 50.
But will it be running 2 times? First does 1 and then checks it's not and goes out, so it checks twice.
It checks once.
Here.
So let me try to explain what's the difference between first while loop and the second while loop. In the first while loop, we first evaluate, and then if condition is true, we go to the while loop body and do some actions, right? In the second example, we do action first, then evaluate, and if the evaluation is true, then we go to the body again, we do something, right? That's why imagine we have bubbles equal to 50 initially. 50, no, maybe let's do 49 initially. Using the first while loop, we first evaluate 49 is less than 50, it's true. Then we go inside the while loop body, we add 1 to 49, right? It's going to be 50 now. Okay, let's go evaluate again. 50 is equal to 50, so the evaluation is false. Then we exit the first while loop and we print 50 bubbles in the water. Okay, now we have 50 bubbles. Then we go to the second loop, right? We start from top to bottom. First thing we need to do is written do bubbles minus minus. So we first do action. We subtract 1 from 50, is going to be 49. Then we go into evaluation stage. So while 49 is more than 50, it's not true, then we exit these loops, right? So we print 49. Is it clear?
And the last, can anyone try? Abdullah?
Abdullah?
Yeah. Clear. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm explaining the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's repeat 2. It means repeat 2 times the command below. So the command is the print line, print a string. A fish is swimming. So yes, in the result, it's print a fish is swimming 2 times because of the repeat 2.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. I think Arslan, could you please try the second while loop in your environment? I want you to see, include the statement print something inside bubbles minus minus, so that we see how many loops are going to be run. Okay. Yeah, this one. Maybe print ln as well, so that we see something was printed, not before, after. Yeah. Okay.
Let me define a value that is greater than 50. For example, if I take 56 here,
maybe 51 is going to be all right. Just quick.
Variable purpose.
Yeah, and then include something.
If,
yes, here, like test or something. Or
if I print this value.
Okay, let's go. Yeah, and after that also print the
final value.
Yeah, the final number. Okay.
Your variable name is bubble or bubbles?
Yeah, you need, there is a inconsistency in your name, in your variable bubbles. Add s. Yeah.
So what I did here, for example, let me print a space here. So what it did here was, it went, let me increment it, the value, so it will be much more clear. So first it did was bubble minus minus, then 52 changed to 51. It printed the value 51. Then it again, then it checked, is 51 greater than 50? Yes, it is. So it would again do the do loop, do part. So now is 51 greater than 50? Yes. So 51 minus minus, that is 50. Then it would print 50. Then it checks, is 50 greater than 50? No, it's not. So it prints the last part, that is 50.
Okay. Thank you. And I think we can now go to summary. Yeah, summary you can read yourself, I think, and then let's do homework, and we finish with the second module. Okay.
So homework, is anyone willing to answer?
Yeah, let's do it together.
Which of the following declares the unchangeable list of a string?
First.
It is saying list. So here it's not a list. For example, if I say it is unchangeable list, that means it is I is talking about immutable list. So what would be the answer? The answer would be list. Let me explain why, Abdullah. You were saying A, but A is array. And it's asking for list of strings.
But it said unchangeable.
But it's unchangeable, but it's not an list. It's not an array. Not saying if it has a unchangeable array or list. Array and list are different things. It's an array, but it's asking for the unchangeable list. So these two options can be excluded because it's an array and it's asking for list. So there are two options in front of us. One is mutable list. We have read that mutable list can be changed. So the last option left to us a list of, and it is immutable as we read. So this is the unchangeable list that cannot be changed. I get it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, good.
So let's go to the second part.
You can try the second question on your environment to see what's going to be the, I mean, Aisha, Tomoki, Abdullah, or if you can do it in your head, it's also good.
It's a good practice to try to, for example, now if I read this, for I in range 3 to 8, step 2 means we increment each time by 2, print I. So for I in range 3 to 8, the first I would be 3.
357.
Yes,
Yeah.
very good. So last answer would be 3. It would be 357.
And the last one.
Last one. What is the person of the purpose of the question mark here? We read this. We read about this in nullability chapter. That this is used so that we can define. We can use a null value to this variable. What would be the answer? The variable rows can now set to null.
Okay, so this is the end of our second module. And we are still deciding what to do next session. It's going to be either functions or we're going to do some practical tutorials of creating some apps, right? So I'm really excited to have you next session and invite your friends to join us on this journey.
In next section, we would try to build an application, a basic application in Android Studio. So we would gain some practical experience for building an application.
Yes, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.